Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, I wanted to just summarize a few things that I'd gone over in depth in yesterday's live. There's a couple major subjects that we wanted to discuss, so I'll get right into that. And one of the things that we did yesterday was kind of go through United's squad and look at it in a depth chart, which I will explain. So we can really look at, where are United lacking? What are they prioritizing? And it's breaking it down, and it's some info based, but it's also some opinion, but some info in terms of what they're actually looking at. So I think you'll find that rather interesting, and I'll go through the whole chart and show it on here and what we've put together. And then following that, the idea will be to look at the positions that we've decided are priorities and what United are looking at, who are they looking at, but also who could they look at, and for those positions. In addition, I just want to cover a couple of things that are out there in the news right now at this point in time that have kind of come out confirming a bit of our information. We've had in the last few days reports that United would be open to letting Eriksen and Anthony leave in January. Things I've been talking about for a little while now about how, United are willing to move forward any plans and departures that they might be able to have, including Eriksen specifically, should there be a valid offer since he's due to depart in summer, and they want to potentially make moves in January if they can get the money to do so. So we've had some reports confirming that. We've had reports confirming United's interest in left backs like Kirkes, as well as left center backs continue like Gerard Braithwaite. And then we've had a report today confirming one of the pieces I shared a few months ago, back in, I think, November, where I was saying that United are looking at potentially a deal for Sverre Nypan in January. And they're still following that. We've had two reports, one from Norway, one from Graham Bailey today and yesterday, confirming that United are interested, that there's potential for something like this to happen. He would be, as I could gather it, definitely it would help having something like Eriksen leaving in order to be able to afford deals like that. He's not the only name, obviously, but the point being, if these young players that they're looking at, like Nypan, Rig, Mastantuono, etc., become available and they can get those deals done in January, they will be willing to make transfers in January. Obviously, their cost will be a factor. They won't want to pay inflated fees, but some of these, like where Nypan plays in Norway, they run January to December, so this is the window for this to occur more reasonably than it would be in summer. So it would make sense in that case. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. Definitely one to keep an eye on. And everything we've heard so far, it's all kind of going to plan. And the biggest thing that will happen now and where things can change is based on Amorim's assessment of our squad, based on Amorim's look at the squad and saying, who does he have? What does he think? Where do these players go? And that's why I wanted to do this kind of depth chart, because there's a few positions that will need his assessment really to determine whether they'll become transfer priorities now or in, of course, the summer. And so let's get into it, because I think that's where it's most interesting. So yeah, this looks obviously like our old transfer chart from pre-summer that people really enjoyed, right? But basically, what I've done here is said, what you ideally want to have in a position is you want to have a player in green, and you want to have at least two in yellow. And what green would mean is that you have a player there where you're confident they can fulfill that role for the next 3 years as a starter. In yellow, you'd want to have a good depth, a suitable depth rotation player for them, or a youth player that could become a top-level starter at some point in time and get ready there. So we went through this all position by position, discussing it, and I'll start with the forwards, because this is where I think there's the biggest question. On the right side, we have over here, this issue with the forwards, which is that on the right side, we have Ahmad, for example. And Ahmad may be somebody who I would put in green because there's a lot of confidence in him. Now they need to tie him down to a contract, but that is looking better. And assuming that occurs, they will feel they have somebody who can fill this role. When you watch Amorim's style of play, Ahmad fits that so well. And I feel that he is the level of talent that could do this. However, you only really have Bruno behind him on the right side as a right-sided forward, and Bruno may not even play in that position. So, and Antony is a player that will likely be replaced. So there's not a lot of depth here. So this is a position of need, and basically our assessment was that they need one person to replace Antony to at least push a second option up into here. So this could be names like Mastantuono, who can be like a right-sided forward. It could be more winger names as well that obviously we could get into. If Bruno or others became right-sided players more specifically, then that could change it as well. At striker, we have two young strikers we purchased in Xerxes and Højlund. And those two players both need to be evaluated. They both need to be looked at. We need to see if one of them can get going. If so, then we probably have enough there, especially when you have in the youth, Ethan Wheatley, Cheeto Obi-Martin. Obviously, they're young, but players that could come into the depth area later on. You could also have in this system potentially guys like Rashford or Garnacho even playing in the middle or at striker, because it may not specifically always be an out-and-out number 9. So it's a position where we don't know that we have somebody totally nailed on, but they're unlikely to make a purchase at this point in time because they're going to want to evaluate these two young strikers that they have signed that they want to give time to. And I think an important point of thinking with the way that United plan and look at and the overall strategy right now is it's going to take time. It's going to take time. This is a multi-year project to build things up. If they need to finish everything and then add a top-level striker in a year or two before to get ready for a title charge, then they can do it then. It's unlikely they're going to want to try to solve that now, but continue to work on these players and evaluate them. On the left side, there's a lot of options, and these players, I think that any one of them could be in the green at some point in time. It could be that Bruno ends up in the green on that side as this left-sided 10, and you have Bruno, Ahmad, and a striker. It could be. It could very well be that Rashford ends up there. I think he has the potential to do that if he can get back up and firing. It could be Garnacho ends up there. We really don't know, but there's a few options, but none of them right now, I would say, are lighting the world on fire to where we be confident that they are that guy for the long term, and we're sort of unsure how they'll fit in Amorim's system. Now, it could be said that I could say the same thing about Ahmad. He hasn't played that much, but in terms of a fit, he could not almost be more perfect. Obviously, this could change with Amorim, but this is sort of the initial assessment anyway. So here, it's less likely we need a signing at any time soon, but we'll have to evaluate it by summer once they kind of get going. We see who can fit. Can somebody get into the green there? Can somebody kick on? If not, and Rashford or Garnacho or somebody was to depart, then obviously we would need to make a signing there, but that's likely not to be urgent at this point. The left back side, this is where it starts to get kind of urgent. You have, now I want to say something here because I've put left footers on the left and right footers on the right, outside of Ahmad. And here's the thing, and Garnacho, I've put them there. Here's the thing about this. This could be the exact opposite. We really could. Because this we don't know, but if you look at Amorim this season and recently, he's mostly played opposite foot wingbacks. Quenda as a young left-footed right winger, Maxi Araujo right-footed left winger. They've been playing in these wingback positions rather, and that may be his priority. That may be what he does. We don't really know that yet. But that is a sincere possibility. So it could be Mazraoui on the left. And it could be, Shaw and Garnacho, Shaw and Ahmad on the right. It could be Mazraoui and Garnacho on the left. We really don't know at this point in time. But if you were to just look at it on the basis of what he's been doing this year, that's what he's been doing. So it could be flipped. Either way, you would still suggest we need a left-footed player. Now, the interesting part about this is that if he does go inverted, buying another right winger who could maybe be the wing back could fulfill this problem, could solve it. Anyway, so it could be one purchase actually solves the right side and the wing back positions, if you think about that for a minute, right? If you flip these and you have Mazraoui and Dalot for the left and Garnacho, and then you have a purchase on the right, and then Shaw, Malacia, and Ahmad, then you have enough. and that person could be a right-sided forward or right-sided winger as well, you might have enough, because if you purchase Quenda, where's he playing? He's playing on the right side. In United are following him, as are many other clubs. So Mastantuono, he could fit into this too. So it's an interesting thing. If he plays inverted, we'd actually need fewer players, which is an interesting point to think about, and something that I realized after going through this is that if you switch the wing backs, you have potentially one purchase can solve your right winger depth and your right wing back depth, and your left back depth is because you swapped the players over and inverted them. Inverted in a different sense than what we've been seeing, but inverted in terms of just their footedness. They still play as wide players, but just their footedness in attacking the final thirds and things like that. So that's very, very interesting, just something to think about as well. We have Amos as not ready yet in the yellow, Shaw as not ready yet in the yellow, Garnacho as we don't know. Could he be a wing back? Could he not? Again, could he be that inverted right-footed? I should say inverted foot. It's not really an inverted wing back, but their footedness is the opposite-footed wing back in the right foot there, Malacia. So right now it looks like an urgent need, but that could change if he flips it and goes with right footers on the left. Then you have Mazraoui, Dalot, and Garnacho who could do it. And on the right, you would have Shaw, Amos, and Ahmad, and it would still be a major need, but it could be solved with the same thing as the right winger. So it's interesting here. If you don't go with the other foot, you need a right winger and you need a left back. If you flip it, you may only need one player. So I'm curious to see what they do with that. I'm very, very curious to see how he evaluates that, and after a few games, what kind of selections that we go with. Because on the right side, we have Mazraoui, who I think is fantastic, and Dalot, but he could very much play on the left in this system. Very, very, very much play on the left in this system. And then you'd still, again, have someone like Garnacho, who could be a more attacking option for that right-footed left wing back. So curious there. That could even minimize the amount of squad building we have to do. When we look to the midfield now, Kabi Mainu, I think, is brilliant for this attacking center mid position. His partnership of two midfielders tends to go with that. One who's more attacking, who does a lot of good defensive work, but also who's more attacking. Kabi Mainu can do it. Mason Mount could do it perfectly. Casemiro can do a great job of it. Eriksen, I think, is too old, but also on his way out. So depending on Casemiro, you may not need to do something in this position this year. If Casemiro is staying for another year and he doesn't leave this summer, if Amorim really likes him, if Mason Mount can stay healthy, you've got plenty of options there. You could play Bruno there, though I think he's much better further advanced rather than deeper. But you could. So I think you have a lot of options there. And then there's a lot of decent players coming through on the youth side as well. On that wingback subject as well, obviously there's potentially youth over the next couple of years as well in Mentato. Then there's guys like Shea Lacey and Ibrahimov who could solve sort of the right-sided thing. And then there's, like, for example, Nypan. And that's and Chris Rigg and these guys, and how they could fit into these young players that could solve a few of these potential problems. So, but yeah, I don't think this is necessarily urgent as an attacking center mid. I do think on the defensive mid side, Ugarte is there. He's solid. He's going to be very likely an important player for Amorim, and Casemiro can, of course, also do that job. So again, it's depending on Casemiro, but likely we need one midfielder capable of playing a more defensive role, right? We need one midfielder more capable of playing a defensive role. We do, and we don't have somebody ready for that yet. So whoever that may be, we probably need somebody there. At center back, on the left side, I believe strongly that a left-sided center back is needed there. Lissandro and Maguire can do it, but neither are ideal for it in terms of profile. They're not great space defenders. They're not great channel defenders. They're more aggressive. They're probably more suited to playing in the central role. They're both good passers, however. And Johnny Evans could do it, but he's, obviously think he's going to retire after the season, and he's too old. So Yeah, and so that's an area where I think you do have a need, where you do have a fairly decent need here, where you need somebody who can do this at a top level, and obviously that's where a player like Gerard Braithwaite comes in. Fast, physical, tall, good space defender, good channel defender, has all those tools. It doesn't have to be Braithwaite, but that's obviously the type of profile that you'd be thinking with. Left-footed as well, ideally. At central center back, I think we have our coverage, which is De Ligt, Maguire, and Lissandra. I think they're all good players for that. I think De Ligt is excellent for it. In Amorim's system, the central center back tends to step up a little bit, be more aggressive. I think all three of them are better in that role, and they're all competent passers of the ball. Right center back, I think we need depth, because I look at and say, okay, this is, again, where you want kind of a sweeper. Somebody who can defend in the channels. Yoro is good. He hasn't played a minute yet. He's perfect for the long term, and he's going to be an amazing talent, but he hasn't played yet. Beyond that, you really only have De Ligt, who isn't ideal in that position, and Lindelof, who fits the profile but isn't good enough and also is in his final year. So I think that you need somebody there as well. So when I look at it overall, I've put my priorities up on this, which is that in the initial sense, if you're not going with the opposite foot wing backs, you need a left back like right away, because you just cannot rely on Shaw. You need a left center back. And those two positions we know are still kind of priority, even by the end of summer, so that makes sense. You need one midfielder, a center mid, defensive midfielder. You need one in there, someone who's got good physical traits, all of that. And then you need a right center back. And kind of beyond that, you need a right center back, but they can be depth. They could be young. They could be somebody who you're not expecting to start, but that can just kind of develop into the role. You have Yoro, De Ligt, Maguire, Lissandro. You need a fifth person, a sixth, really, because you want to buy a left center back, in replacing Evans and Lindelof, a young player who could play in this kind of role and grow into it, who could rotate in there, who's big, tall, physical. So two big, physical, fast center backs for left and right, that can kind of grow into that role. That it doesn't have to be a starter right away. I think you need that. So I think that's very doable between January and summer. And then conditionally, you're going to look at it and say, okay, yeah, depending on our forwards, if we flip these wing backs, for example, yeah, we may just need one right-sided player like Mastantuono, who could probably do both, or Quenda, who could probably do both. Again, depending on Amorim. So those are the big decisions that he's going to be looking at based on this. How do I use these wing backs? Do I flip them? In which case, what do we need and where are we lacking? Because it probably makes it the other side that we're lacking. And getting a natural left-footed, right-sided player would make a lot of sense. In the midfield, if Casemiro can be fit for purpose for another year, you could probably go a little bit longer on who you're signing for that position, if Mount can stay healthy and how he fits. And then based on your striker and left side, what kind of player do you want there in attack? So these are like early assessments. They've been tracking left backs. They've been tracking left center backs. They've been tracking kind of these midfielder sort of hybrids, as well as some sort of right winger-ish type players. So that's what's going to, really, this is where Amorim is at now. But initially, at a really surface level view, this is how I see it in terms of priority. There's so much that could change, just because, they, you don't know. Like if you buy a Nypan and you put him in the system, where does he play right now? I actually am not sure. Where does he play right now? How does he fit? He might fit into this attacking midfield role. He might fit as a left winger, but you actually have a fair number of players for that position. So where do all these guys fit? That's sort of the curiosity. When you had three midfielders, there was a little bit different. When you had a 10 and we don't really have any backup 10s, it was a little bit different. Now, I'm not so sure. If you sign a Mastantuono, I think you can fit him in on the right side in a few different positions, similar how you might Aquenda or something like that. Not saying they're the same player, but these are questions we don't have the answers to, and we won't until Amorim is able to actually get going and play with these players, and we'll then we can revisit this. But this is like, again, similar to the transfer chart. The whole point of this is to look at it on a very early look and say, this is what we may need. We may need these positions. And right now it looks like these are the main positions of need based on the best guesses and best evaluations of our depth and what United have been looking at, because these are positions they have been looking at pretty extensively. This is what they can do. But, you know, new manager, new evaluations, new time, new idea of players. You know, we'll have to see. And it may be we don't need them. You know, that's the interesting part about it. Again, switching the midfield system up, really it depends on how the forwards are set up to where, you know, we may not need the same number of midfielders. We may not need all these young guys. And we may just be signing defenders moving forward. And maybe one right-sided player. So we'll find out. But it is certainly interesting times to kind of try to break this all down and look at it ahead of January. And I think that's why we don't see a lot of it. Not that they're necessarily going to do huge business in January, but the point being, you know, it's hard right now to evaluate, because I can sit there and say, I know they're watching these players and look at them, but what will Amorim do with it? Where is he, you know, what he might see strengths and weaknesses in players very differently to what we've seen now once he actually gets his hands on them. And that's the job. That's the coach. That is the job of the coach when it comes to recruitment, is to look and say, yeah, that player can fit into how I want to play here. You know, it's not to go and pick their signings. That's not what Amorim's going to be doing. But it will be to say, hey, I need a left wing back who's right-footed. That's what I want. And they will go get it. That's how the good relationships work with coaches and with recruitment staff at top clubs and at the best run clubs. And so, you know, now a lot of those decisions might be changing, because I think obviously they're different to how Ten Hag would have seen them. Very different to how Ten Hag would have seen them in terms of what you value and all of that as well. So we'll see. But I thought this was an interesting exercise. I'm going to, just to pull this back up really quick. So I'm going to make a video on who United are looking at for some of these positions already. And then obviously, you know, kind of like a shopping list of, if these are the positions we end up going for, who would be probably the best fits and the best players. And then, you know, and do that during this break. And then we'll see what happens over the next few months. And then come ahead of January, we'll probably get a better idea of if those are accurate and where we're going. But as of now, at least, there's some evidence United are still looking at this kind of overall plan, you know, of how they want to build things still in the squad. It's not going to be too manager-centric or coach-centric, but you know, certainly in line with their overall ideas on the squad. Okay? Thank you for watching today's video. Hope it was interesting. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next one.